This is Group 4's presentation on Disney's Cinderella, filmed in 1950, and this is Libby Wozniak speaking. Okay, so an overview of Cinderella the film. Her father remarries the stepmother and then passes, leaving her with the stepmother and sisters. The family treats her terribly. She's required to do all the work of the house, but an important piece is that she makes animal friends, which keep her happy and keep her from feeling miserable. An invitation to the royal ball is delivered, and Cinderella is given tasks to complete before she can go. She does these, but the stepsisters ruin her clothing, preventing her from going. Then the fairy godmother comes and gives her the new clothes, carriage and footmen. Cinderella goes to the ball and meets the prince, and then leaves the ball before midnight without telling him her name or anything. He declares that he will only marry the girl who fits the shoe left behind, and Cinderella gives the Duke her shoe and marries the prince. So there were several important authors in influencing this film, and one of those was Perrault. A large majority of the plot of this version of Cinderella comes from Perrault. The only real differences are that there are only 2 days of festival. There are 2 days of festival in Perrault's version, but only one in the Disney version. And Cinderella displays kindness to the stepsisters at the ball and later forgives them at the end of the story. However, Disney leaves that out. And then Grimm. Grimm has a lot less influence on the film than Perrault does, but some elements from the story are carried over. Stepsisters aren't forgiven in this version of the story, and again, she's given a list of tasks to complete before she can attend the ball. So the animation of this film is very important. The chief animators of this film were Eric Larson, Milt Kahl, Mark Davis, Les Clark, etc. Larson and Davis were important in the design of the Cinderella character, and one of them wanted to do a braided girl with a pug-like face, and one wanted a more exotic look with a swan-like neck. And so the Cinderella character in this film has a combined vision of those two elements. And Kahl designed the character of the fairy godmother, and he wanted to move away from a regal type fairy godmother that was much more beautiful and very majestic, towards what would be seen as more of a motherly type figure. So that's why the fairy godmother looks like a mother or a grandmother in this film. And then Lucifer, the cat, which is very important to the story, is modeled off of the animator Ward Kimball's Calico Cat, after one of the chief, I think it was Disney, that visited his home and said, "There's your idea for Lucifer, it can just be this cat." And then the last thing in this film was the time period. So obviously, time periods of films have very important influences on them, and as many American tales do, Disney's Cinderella is a rags to riches story, and that is a mirror of the post-war culture in America when it was very American dream. If you work hard, you'll be able to move up in life. So Cinderella starts very, very low in her life from childhood and has to work her way to a better life for herself.
Was considered to be a pioneer to many for his animation and the realism he used in his films. If we look at this scene here, we can definitely see the realism that Disney strived for. For example, we take Cinderella's arm, we can see it's bent down to the elbow, and then it kind of curves up, and we see the hand with the well-defined fingers. Another thing I want to point out with this whole limb here is that we see that her wrist is thinner, and then as it goes down and up, it gets a little thicker, just like it would in real life. You got the same aspect here. You got the elbow, crease of the elbow, a little thicker, and then as it goes up, you see it thins out. We also, another part in the scene that we think, or I believe the realism portrays, is right here by the umbrella stand. We see the base of the umbrella stand, which is thick, so it can hold the umbrellas. Once they're in the stand, the stand will come a little heavier. But you see that base, you can see where he portrayed to be heavier. And you kind of see like the thin bottom of the second piece or the top piece of the base, and then it thickens out to the top, so then it holds the umbrellas. And another 3D aspect of the film in this scene is right here is this candle wall hanging. We see the mirror, and you can tell the mirror is attached to the wall, but it also kind of gives you a 3D effect of the candle piece sticking out of the wall. You see that here? It's almost like you can see it's just kind of sticking out a little bit with the candle and the base of the candle. Walt Disney strived and fulfilled his request with his films on having the films to be as realistic as possible. He wanted that realistic look and feel to them so people could relate to them. And he did that by adding weight to the characters, by adding bone depth to characters, and a depthness even to his individual images. For my second slide, I focused on the facial expressions of the animals. Walt Disney wanted people to relate to the animals on a personal level and feel connected to them, but he also wanted their facial expressions to relate what the feeling that he was trying to portray in the movie. For example, we look here at Gus and Jack. We can see that Jack is kind of looking like, ooh, what else can we use here? As he's putting the beads on Gus's tail. Gus is kind of like, ooh, what's going on? He's a little curious, a little ooh, he's not sure about that. You get that sense. We go over here in the next picture, we see all the animals working together to build this amazing dress for Cinderella. You can feel the high energy in the air, the whistling, the singing, the ribbon flying behind the birds. Jack and Gus coming in with the beads. We see the mice down here actively working. Our next scene we look at here is with the fairy godmother changing the pumpkin into the carriage. You see the shock, like they just have never seen anything like this, on the horse and on the dog. The mice are even ponying like, wow, look at that, look at her, what is she doing? Next we go over here and look at Lucifer the cat and Bruno the dog. We got Lucifer kind of got that smile, the cat that swallowed the mouse smile to him. You got the dog looking at the cat like, really? Not impressed by you. In our final scene, we look at here as Cinderella takes out the dress, and you see the excitement on the birds. They're all excited for Cinderella. She gets to attend the ball, that she's got this dress. You see the mice even looking up in awe. Disney really portrayed well using his animal faces on what he wanted the audience to feel with the animals. In the bedroom scene, Walt Disney definitely portrayed that realism in the film. Now, when Cinderella first enters the room, we see the lights fall across her head of bars, reminding us that she's a prisoner in her own home. As she approaches the bed closer, everything becomes pitch black. And all we see is the stepmother's little beady eye that gives you that ominous darkness feel to it. And then as things lighten up, you eventually, during their conversation, you see Cinderella, you see the stepmother, you see Lucifer, and you see the white sheets, but everything else remains black. Again, giving you that realistic, dark feeling like this is a negative scene, this is not a positive, upbeat, happy scene. One thing I noticed with all of Disney's films is that he did not use a cookie cutter mold for his characters. He added depth to them. He added that character feel to them so you could relate to them. You can almost put yourself in their position. Now, for example, here we've got the king and the Grand Duke. You got the king, he kind of made short and fat and chubby. But he also kind of made him where he's high energy. He's always bouncing from his next thought to his next thought to his next thought. And you got the Grand Duke here who's thin and tall. And it's kind of bullied. He's bullied by the Grand Duke. He's bullied by the stepsisters. He's bullied by the stepmother. We got Jack and Gus. Same thing here. Gus is a short little fat mouse, always getting in trouble, never able to think things out for himself. We got Jack here, who's tall, thin. He's the one that's always getting them out of trouble. Always the one that's, oop, stop, let's think this through. And he does. He's the one that comes up with the final plans. Cinderella and the stepmother is another classic separation. They're not a cookie cutter mold of each other. Cinderella has more of a softer, rounder face. The stepmother has more of an angular, pointed face. She has more of that strictness look to her.
Hello, my name is Jake DeMillemeester, and I'll be doing visual analysis on Cinderella, focusing on the lines, actions being depicted, and apparel. For my first image, I chose this one of the mouse Gus trapped in a mousetrap. So the first thing we can see about this image is the use of very explicit lines. You can easily see them in this image, and they draw your attention right towards Gus. The line perspective used also creates depth in the image and shows that he is further away from the screen than as opposed to these lines up here. And this is used through linear perspective, how they converge towards the middle and get smaller and smaller down. Now this line makes use of linear lines going right in towards Gus and circular lines that go around him, all with the purpose of drawing your attention right down to Gus. The second image is Prince Charming and Cinderella dancing in the garden. So first off, you can see there's a large use of horizontal and vertical lines here. The vertical are seen on the left side with these arborvitaes and on the right side with another arborvitae here. Vertical lines are also seen in the columns of this gazebo in the middle, which really brings the attention right towards the couple dancing at the base of them. The horizontal lines in the image are from the shadows of the arborvitaes and they go across the field. Another horizontal line is the actual horizon, which cuts right through the couple. Now this image uses a lot of patterns that are commonly seen in photography, such as the S-curve. Now the S-curve is when an image has objects or subjects that curve throughout the image and create a very visually pleasing image to the viewer. So this S-curve starts down here with the gravel path, curves towards the left, and then up right through the couple, and then it kind of continues with the clouds and up here into the stars. So S-curves are used to visually please the viewer, and I think it creates a really good image in this situation. Another common photography trick here is using the horizon to intersect the couple, which usually is not what you want to do in photography, but when you purposely do it, such in this case, it draws the attention right to the couple in the center of the image. My next image is Prince Charming and Cinderella dancing in the ballroom. So the first thing about this image is both the characters are seen in their own space. They take up their own areas and they don't really intersect except where his hand is on her hip and where their hands are touching behind his body. This image also has lots of hints of the late classical period seen in their statues, such as Prince Charming with his bent knee here, his weight is on his left side, his hips are turned in and towards the princess, and his shoulders are bent downwards and in. This creates the look that Prince Charming is in motion, and his body is fluid. This is commonly seen in statues such as the Venus de Milo and the statue of David. Now, with Cinderella, it's harder to tell because she has this large dress on that blocks most of her legs and hips, but you can see her arms and her shoulders are in motion here, and so is her hand. And our next image is of Cinderella cleaning the floors. So she's drawn sitting on her knees with her legs bent, arms up in good posture form, and wringing out a sponge into a bucket. So you can tell that she is in motion by wringing out the sponge by the use of her hands, and how her arm is slightly bent here. My last image is bringing attention to Cinderella's clothing and the clothing of her stepsisters and stepmother. So you can see Cinderella has this white apron on, a headscarf covering her hair, and overall muted colors with this light blue and this brown color. Now these all show that she is mostly a servant in her house and considered like lower class as opposed to the stepsisters and stepmother, who are all seen wearing big ball gowns with bell shapes, curves, bright colors with this yellow, this dark purple, and the light purple over here. They have nice ribbons in their hair, and they have lots of jewelry on. These all show that they are upper class and wealthy, as opposed to Cinderella's working class and poor. Thank you, and next to Riam.
Okay, so I will be doing the color portion of this visual analysis. I wanted to start off with talking about warm versus cool colors in general. So with warm colors, we have our obvious reds, yellows, and oranges. Typically, warm colors evoke feelings of happiness. People associate warm colors with sunlight, summer, that type of feel, as opposed to cool colors, which tend to be your blue, green, and violet. So colors of the sky, grass, they can evoke feelings of calm, but also feelings of sadness. Blue typically relates to depression, and depending on the contrast of also the cool colors and warm colors together, that can also invoke all different types of feelings depending on the tone and contrast of all of those colors. So first, I wanted to talk about Lady Tremaine. So I will be just focusing on the contrast of colors overall, including her dress. So if we're going to talk about Lady Tremaine, first of all, she's wearing a kind of dark, almost oxblood dress with a slight kind of purple underneath shirt to it and purple eyeshadow, which I feel like the red represents her kind of boldness and her attitude towards her daughter. And Cinderella, she tends to be kind of oxblood can be this almost regal color, as she kind of is as a person, but also she's very rude and angry, which is also represented in the red. Also, the colors of the red and purple and the purple eyeshadow as well, with the contrast of her really light green eyes, make her seem a little bit more intense and scary, and goes along with that evil villain narrative that she has going for her. In addition to that, you also see the green ring and the green staff thing that she's holding right here, and the green earrings. The whole contrast is that while she kind of has a mix of all of her daughters together. So she has the greed, the anger, almost, and you can see these colors don't really blend well together. So it's almost like a disheveled but still a nice look. Almost she's trying to stay regal, and she still can't, because these colors don't really, they contrast each other. It's not really a color that blends in together. Next, we will talk about these stepsisters, Anastasia and Drizella. I will just start off with Drizella. So as you can see, like I said, you can see the yellows and the reds and purples as compared to the mother. Obviously, the mother has much more muted tones, as opposed to the sisters, which are very bleak and stark. With Drizella, you have the really, really bright greens going on, this kind of olivey toned green here with the almost neon yellow-green color going, and the blue-green headband, which does symbolize her jealousy and greed. Drizella is a very jealous character. She gets jealous of not only Cinderella, but even Anastasia sometimes, where they will start fighting over it, as opposed to where you can see Anastasia is dressed in, obviously she has red hair, she's dressed in pinks and purples, different hues of red. She is kind of a more angry character. Not that her sister isn't, but she just tends to be much more angry. And you can see, obviously, in this picture, she's hitting her sister literally, which, again, refers back to my point. In addition to that, you can also see the contrast between the two sisters themselves, where you can see the colors of the greens and then the colors of the pinks and the purple don't really mesh well together, as do the sisters. They don't really mesh well together. They're constantly arguing, And so it was a smart choice of the illustrators to make the colors complete opposites because that's how they are in person. Next, I wanted to talk about Cinderella. So with Cinderella, there's a lot of things we could talk about. One of the very most obvious things is she's always in a very dusty blue color. This is emulant of how dainty and calm Cinderella tends to be. She's more of a sensitive character. She doesn't really, she's not very outspoken. She's not very outspoken and angry or bleak or bold. She just seems like a very nice, well put together character, which is why she's always dressed in these very dusty blues, very warm, cool colors that exhibit calmness towards her. And you can see also in this photo specifically where the background tends to blend in with her dress and that whole imagery of, you see the blues going from a very light blue to a very dark blue, but it's a whole blend of blues. There's no starkness or bleakness about it. It just blends all together as the Cinderella. And then all together, to just compare, you can see Cinderella here where she's very smooth and not harsh at all, and then you can kind of see the kind of bright greens and reds that jump out at you, as opposed to Cinderella, who's very dainty, and then this is very stark. And then where the stepmother is kind of almost a muted version of the stepsisters, where she does have the pinks, the purples, and the greens, but they're not as stark. They don't jump out at you as much, as opposed to.
So I will be talking about the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo scene from Cinderella and the use of color and lines within this scene. So one of the elements used is light. The first time we see light really used within this scene is the use of a spotlight to emphasize the start of all the transformations, seen by the spotlight on the pumpkin in the lower left-hand corner. Another use of light within this scene is the blacked out background. That really puts emphasis on the transformations that are happening and everything that really happens in the forefront of this scene. So the fairy godmother is dressed in these pastel colors. These, as you can see, it's kind of a violet color. And this really gives her the warm and comforting feeling that is needed, as this is a children's movie. And it makes the children feel more comfortable and open to her. And another element of hers is the white wand that she uses. Again, stands out greatly against the dark black background. And it really just draws the viewer's eyes in, and we really follow it throughout the scene, as well as the magic that flows off of it throughout anytime she moves. And as you can see here, it really kind of just flows from where she's moving. So another important color usage is within the transformations. As you can see down here, the mice are brown and they have these just plain colored shirts and hats and stuff. Bruno the dog is brown, and the horse is this gray color. And they are all transformed into these pristine white colors over here that you'll see, with the mice transforming into the white horses, the horse transforming into the coachman, and the dog transforming into the footman. So there's also strong use of lines within this scene. As you can see up here, the vines of the pumpkin create really strong lines, especially when you're actually watching the movie and they're flowing out from the pumpkin. They really create these strong, vivid lines that your eyes kind of follow as it transforms from the pumpkin into the carriage. Another strong use of lines is with the magic that the fairy godmother uses. As you can see down here with Cinderella, our eyes really kind of follow it as it spirals up as she transforms into her dress. And if you pay attention to each of the other transformations, you'll see that the magic does the same thing. Your eyes kind of trail with it. So some of the influential authors, as previously mentioned, have been Perrault and Grimm, with Perrault's version being the main basis for the story. There's also a strong use of color within the Cinderella story, with the cooler pastel colors emphasizing Cinderella and all of her positions throughout the story, versus the bold colors of her stepmother and stepsisters. With color, there's also the use of light, both in the boo scene that we talked about, as well as the bedroom scene that was spoken on earlier. Lines are also a strong use within this movie, as they really direct the viewer's eyes to Cinderella most of the time, but they also depict this depth and realism within each of the scenes. And it also helps to make these characters realistic and relatable, between their actions, their clothing, and their emotions, these characters are very relatable to the audience, and this makes it a very accepting and enjoyable movie.